Good morning. Welcome to the Take Your Life Back Today show and radio show. One's on YouTube on channel Take Your Life Back Today show. One is here, right here where you're watching. My name is Ralph. I'm a host, an author, and an addiction recovery coach and life coach. I want to talk about the injustice in sentences between cocaine and crack. American drug laws make it pretty clear that our legal system thinks crack is extra whack. For instance, there are federal guidelines ensuring that people who get caught with crack are sentenced more harshly than those who are caught with powder cocaine. And incidentally, crack and cocaine are the same thing, just one is hardened. This is often what people are referring to when they mention drug-related sentencing disparities. The 100-to-1 rule as a law went into effect, and Congress did a serious injustice when it imposed much tougher penalties on defendants convicted of selling crack, form of cocaine, the kind most often used in improvised minority communities. Then the ones that are found sold on streets are usually cocaine. In what's known as the 100-to-1 rule, federal law mandates a 10-year sentence for anyone caught with 50 grams of crack, about the weight of a candy bar. To get a comparable sentence, a dealer selling powdered cocaine would have to be caught with 5,000 grams, enough to fill a briefcase. Crack versus cocaine. Here's the real difference. My friends, listen up now. Possession of powdered cocaine has very different sentencing outcome in the court of law than possession of crack cocaine. Politicians' war on drugs played in the lead role in casting a drug in the light we see today. For a great example of this, check out the presidential address that George H.W. Bush sent across the airwaves from the Oval Office in 1989. You can find that on YouTube. What's most pressing problem today? Then the president asks, cocaine and in particular crack cocaine. Who's responsible? Bush continues. Everyone who uses drugs, everyone who sells drugs, and everyone who looks the other way. He went on to discuss crack itself. It's as innocent looking as candy, but it's turning our cities into battle zones, and it's murdering our children. Crack was used as a scapegoat for complex social problems: unemployment, poor education, lack of resources, violence, and the list goes on. It was easy to blame drugs for inner city woes, which made the war on drugs appear to be a necessary and helpful solution. This is not to say that drug use weren't widespread during the late 80s and in the early 90s, because it really was. And it still is important to note that cocaine is harmful for you in any form. However, demonizing crack is tied to specific beliefs about the users, where they come from, what they look like, and the role they play in society. Friends, is crack really all that different from its more glamorous counterpart, powder cocaine? I don't agree with either one of them, but the answer is simply no. But then again, neither drug is harmless. They are both incredibly damaging. So why does the law look at them so differently? In search of the truth, we asked an expert for help. Jenny Stein from the PharmDB CPS is a clinical pharmacist who maintains a blog focused on addressing the way addiction is viewed and treated. Stein shared the difference between crack and powder cocaine and the science behind the addiction. She also offered her opinion of how crack epidemic began, along with how we should be talking about the drugs, decriminalizing legalization and addiction. Here's a question we had, and are crack and powder cocaine the same drug? The answer is yes, they are the same drug. Both are cocaine. So then, what's the difference between the two? Tell me about crack versus cocaine. The answer? The actual chemical effects of crack versus powder cocaine are not different. However, the chemical makeup of crack versus powder cocaine does slightly differ. Powder cocaine is a hydrochloride salt from cocaine HCl. This is how cocaine exists in nature from cocoa leaves. As a salt, it is soluble in water, stable as a powder, and usually snorted through the nose and absorbed through the nasal mucosa membranes. It can also be dissolved in water or melted and injected. Crack cocaine is the free-base form of cocaine. There is a longer scientific explanation, but basically it is not a salt. It is a powder cocaine that has been processed with a base, such as baking soda, to remove the HCl. In its free-base form, cocaine is more hyperfolic, meaning it's able to be rapidly absorbed when smoked. You see the difference now? But they're both cocaine. Question: can you tell me about the way drugs are used and their effects? The answer is because powder cocaine and crack have different formulations, they are used differently and therefore have different effects. The different effects are 100% related to the way they are used, not the chemical formulation, beyond the fact that the differing formulations allow for different routes of administration. A high from snorter cocaine will hit you in about 1 to 5 minutes, be at its peak within 20 to 30 minutes, and the 1 to 2 hours is how long the high might last. The high from inhaled or injected cocaine will hit you in less than a minute, be at its peak within 3 to 5 minutes, and last about 30 minutes to an hour. Big difference. The onset and peak happen much faster with inhaled, if smoked, and injected cocaine, and the user experiences the effects of the drug all at once, so that the user will get higher than if the same amount of cocaine were snorted. Crack cocaine is inhaled, but powder cocaine can be injected, resulting in the same onset peak duration effect that crack produces. Because inhalation and injection get this user high, more drug is delivered all at once, and the high happens faster and wears off faster. The behavior is highly self-reinforcing. This leads itself to repetition or binges, where the user will use or hit over and over to repeat the high that wears off quickly. This pattern of use makes users inhale and inject more vulnerable to addictive effects of the drug. Here's another question we ask: how does cocaine affect your body? Answer is, this is complicated. It affects literally every single organ system in your body. It affects at least 5 or 6 different neurotransmitters in your brain all at once in different ways. Again, the differences between crack and powder cocaine are mainly attributable to the route of administration, how you do the drug. So smoking crack can have toxic effects to the lungs that are not problems with snorting cocaine. In the same way, snorting cocaine can have effects on the mucous membranes not seen with smoked crack. Question we had: what does it feel like to be high? Answer: cocaine is a central nervous system stimulant, so it speeds you up. The effects can be thought as similar to a huge dose of caffeine. It's not just a stimulant, it also produces feelings of euphoria or intense pleasure, feeling amazing, feeling like you can take on the whole world, otherwise known as beer muscles. And that has to do with the fact that it releases a huge amount of adrenaline. So not only is stimulating you in a way that caffeine does, but it stimulates you in a way that an adrenaline rush does. It can also be associated with sensory changes because of its effect on dopamine. But it's less common to hallucinate with cocaine than it is with other drugs, although it's within the realm of possibility. There are people that have. So it produces euphoria, feelings of intense pleasure, and those feelings are reinforcing for people that are pleasure-seeking or don't have other sources of pleasure in their life, or maybe the particular high that cocaine produces is the pleasure they like the most. It's very reinforcing. We had another question: how does the reinforcement work? I mean, how does it work? So there are 2 ways that the reinforcement works. One way is from the psychological standpoint. If you find something that's like medicine that works for you, that treats your illnesses, you're more inclined to want to take it again. If you're depressed and find an antidepressant that works for you, you want to use it more, don't you? You don't want to stop, even if it feels dangerous sometimes. That's one thing. People who choose cocaine as a drug of choice do so because it's meeting a certain need for them. That's sort of from the addiction standpoint. From the psychological standpoint, the way that it works in the brain is it increases levels of all these neurotransmitters in the synapses of your brain. Basically, if you have a feel-good chemical and it's supposed to hit you in your synapses little by little, but you put a whole bunch of it there, like when you do cocaine, it produces a lot of stimulation. What happens though is synapses actually adapts to the higher level of feel-good chemical, so that the more you use the drug like cocaine, the more this synapses changes. You reduce the number of receptors for the feel-good chemical that exists in the synapses. When that happens, the same amount of feel-good chemical produces less euphoria, and then if you don't have high amounts of the feel-good chemical, you may not be able to feel euphoric at all, because the levels that you are used to having don't produce the same amount of stimulation that they did use at one time. Those are the two things that happen. One is, hey, this is working for me and I want to continue to do to have this experience. And the other is, if I don't continue to use this drug to have this experience, it's becoming harder for me to have the experience in other ways that I'm so used to. Also with cocaine and other drugs that cause rapid tolerance, that's called tachyplaxis. You can also recover. So if you spend a lot of time not using, your synapses go back to normal eventually. The damage is not necessarily permanent. Folks, one more question. Can things that are not chemical drugs be reinforced? Absolutely. It's a myth to say addiction is caused by the drug. Addiction is a behavioral phenomenon that comes from the place of an individual having needs to fill. When somebody finds something that makes them feel good and makes them feel the way they want, it has the potential to be used in a way that's manipulative. What that means basically is you can drink and have it feel good and not become a problem. And you might not become a problem drinker because you recognize that you could use other things to feel good, or you recognize that sometimes using it would make you feel bad. Or you cannot have that happen at all when you drink and it makes you feel good. And so you double down and think, if I drink more, I'll feel even better. And that's true for anything in life. When it comes down to food addiction, for example, people may feel a sense of happiness, fullness, relief, or comfort when they eat. And that's what does it for them. Some people fail to recognize that it has limits, and they try to push it beyond the limits, where basically food becomes their go-to for the feeling better or anything that makes them feel better. And that's what addiction does to you. It makes you feel like you're over-reliant, you're dependent on one coping mechanism, which then becomes manipulative and destructive. So Oreo cookies' effects on the brains aren't the same as cocaine effects on the brain, but behaviorally they could be used in the same ways that someone would use cocaine. Folks, call me at 844-405-HELP. Together we can help each other take our lives back. Be good to yourselves, be good to each other. Remember, a simple smile to a total stranger can help that stranger, and it can help you. Crack and cocaine are the same thing. They're both cocaine, but the sentencing guidelines are 100 to 1. Remember that. Folks, have a great day. May God bless you, and we'll talk to you guys real soon. Bye-bye.